So Avery, word on the street is that you recently got accepted into Donda Academy.
I had my first day this past week. Uh, you know, at Kanye's new school. Wrote about it in our newsletter actually.
You're in high school?
Where's she at? Yeah, they actually didn't have any sort of admittance policy, so I was kind of just able to go.
Oh, you're a
Most of the
5-star
movies were
athlete?
like,
They were
you
so
didn't know Avery
focused.
was a 5-star athlete.
Well, actually, they were so focused on the athletes, I was just able to go.
He was kind of able to walk in.
Yeah. So
What's
I
that
wrote
movie
about
where
it.
Adam Sandler has to go back to elementary school?
Um,
You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about?
he like despite his dad, he went back through like all the grades.
Oh,
That's kind of what
Billy,
Avery had to
Billy
do.
Madison. Billy Madison.
nah, I didn't see that one. I
Didn't see
remember
Billy
one
Madison?
where he had a kid in elementary
Isn't that like
school.
a classic?
It is.
I feel like even if I've seen a movie, it's like don't nobody else have an excuse. Wait, but we're not a movie pod. But Avery wrote about his experience at Donda Academy, so you should take a look. Do we have to say it's satire, or can people just sort of realize that? I feel like they can just they'll get it.
They'll decipher.
They should get it. Yeah, they should get
I
it.
mean, I said Candace Owens is teaching American history in here, so I hope.
But that's very on brand for Don. What I would imagine Donda Academy to be. So. I'm not going to get into politics, but never mind. But so Donda Academy is a thing that's happening, and it's just crazy. First, let's establish the fact that there is like precedent for rappers or like different entertainers choosing to open schools. Like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, how Dr. Dre is opening one in LA, I think, or Compton, I think. LeBron has a school. You guys say Jay-Z has a school, right? Like a trade school or something?
Well, I know P. Diddy does. I know P. Diddy
Or
got
P.
a school.
Diddy.
Jay-Z did something with the school. I don't know if it's his, but he did something with the school.
So that's insane. And I'm curious as to what this will look like. I know it's easy to clown on it, but like, they've attracted top talent. They got, what's his man's name? Jockey Howard. That's a
Jockey.
There's something on my screen.
Jockey.
And he apparently was a top basketball recruit that's now committed to Donda Academy. So I wonder if this is going to be one of those situations where instead of giving you a formal education, they sort of just allow you to, maybe pursue different trades or like,
It's surprising to me because it's happening so fast. Because usually, like you see, the schools are like, in 2 years we'll have this school open. Like the Dr. Dre thing, like they're saying that they were announcing they're opening a school. Kanye's like, yeah, I'm gonna have a school in a couple weeks, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's really quick.
I guess he had been looking at some. I guess he had been looking at some land in California, so like that's where it's gonna be.
Which I feel is something to talk about because I thought this would be in like Chicago, no, but it's in Cali because they don't have enough resources and in whatever rich affluent part of California. The school is probably going to be in Simi Valley, California.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird because that. Go ahead.
I would say the basketball team, as of right now, does not have a coach, but they are also planning a game against Sierra Canyon, where LeBron's son goes, at the Staples Center. So.
Wait, hold on, you guys. Let me read to you all the Donda Academy mission, which I'm kind of here for. Using an ethic of integrity and care, Donda Academy prepares students to become the next generation of leaders, thinkers, and innovators by providing them with a world-class education that includes a rigorous core curriculum and an emphasis on sustainability, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. Now, if I wasn't confused, I'd say this actually sounds like quite the goal for an academy. It sounds like he's going to take it quite seriously. So, did you have that? Sorry, wait, go on.
Keep talking.
Yeah, I was just saying it's kind of crazy because the way he got the recruit was he just DM'd him. It wasn't like, hey, we want to. He just like, hey, bro, want to go to this school?
Well,
he was
I'm
like,
sure. I mean, and it's Kanye West. It's in California. Like, I'm sure they're gonna at the very least give you a good network of people to meet. So I see why a top prospect who may not care that much about school in the first place may hop at the opportunity to go to Donda Academy. I just want to see what this ultimately looks like. As sort of crazy as we know Kanye is. I think it's sort of I don't think he'd mess around with the school made in his mom's name.
I mean, really, I really don't know. I mean, he created shirts that are black shirts called, Donda shirts. Like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know what Kanye's gonna do unless it's like in the fashion or music, or not even music industry. Unless it's like in the fashion industry, he's like, I'm doing this. Like, I'm partnering with. I'm like, oh, I'll believe that. Everything else is kind of up in the air in terms of like what his plans are. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but I will say one thing I'll give.
But he's
Kanye
always inconsistent with that.
I feel like one thing I'll give Kanye is every time he says he's dedicated to something, he does it. And for the most part, I feel like, let's put aside the presidential run, he does it fairly well. Mm-hmm. He wants to do fashion. He has the biggest fashion brand, like one of the biggest fashion brands ever right now. So I think if he's saying, I'm going to commit to education and I'm going to do it in my mom's name, I would like to imagine that he would actually make sure this is well staffed, has good resources, he has guidance for people who actually know what they're doing. Avery, what's this you have up right here? Is this another mission statement?
This is from their website where it says Donda Academy, finding the intersection between faith and innovation of the future. Donda Academy is focused on equipping students with an education that will last in the ever-changing world.
Okay.
The intersection between faith and innovation feels a lot, but...
I mean, it's a private school. Maybe it'll be a Christian private school.
Oh my gosh, you can
Oh, this is how you apply? Wait, Avery,
gosh.
go to what Donda Academy pathways your child interested in. Is that like?
Oh my gosh, Avery, apply. You gotta apply.
You can't click on that. What are the pathways? How do you figure out what the different pathways of Donda? Like, I'm not super invested in this, but I at least want to see what.
First of all, this is a terrible application. This application is terrible. Like the way it's super.
Virgil Abloh designed this application.
Nah, it was definitely Kanye. You see this? This was definitely Kanye. This is ridiculous. This looks super. It's almost too simple. It's like, bro, like what the heck? Like, Avery, grade?
I would only go up to 8th grade.
Because you only got to be a high school superstar to you got to be a high school superstar.
How are those recruits going then?
Well, they're getting DMs from Kanye. That's how.
They're getting DMs from Kanye. Literally, that dude was like, "Yo, Kanye DM'd me," and he was like, "Yo, bro, come to this Donda." Would you let your child go to Donda Academy?
Yeah, that's a good question.
No.
Would I let my child go to Donda Academy?
No, I wouldn't. There's too much up in the air. I wouldn't, because there's too much up in the air with outside of like fashion. What else is he like? Hey, I'm gonna do this, and like it's organized all the time. Even music, it's super unorganized.
I know, but I don't think Kanye is gonna be the soul. I don't think Kanye's gonna run this. I think it's just Donda Academy. I think Kanye knows better.
But it doesn't matter. It's his name behind it, and we did think.
No, it does matter.
Well,
What do you?
I'm saying.
I think because it sounds like you're saying because it's in Kanye's name, you can't see it being like an organized school because Kanye is such like a chaotic person.
I'm just
and
saying.
My answer to that is I don't think Kanye will be as involved in the day to day for this to be like,
I'm just hesitant because, I know we're talking about presidential run, but remember he had people in his court saying like, what are you doing? We shouldn't be doing this. I'm just saying like Kanye's the type of guy that will do things like, hey, I'm going to take the head on this. I'm just saying it's not out of the realm of possibility that Kanye's like, yo, I'm the principal of Donda.
Well, let's see what it looks like. I feel like I would allow my kids to go just because I think I'd want to see what one semester looks like before I let my kids go. But assuming it's not a SHIT show, I'd let my kids go just because of the resources I know will be poured into this private school in California. Like, I know it's not going to be some like run of the mill, whatever. Like Dr. Dre may walk in and teach a guest lecture, like that's amazing. So I'd be open to it.
Dr. Dre can go to
the next generation of innovators. And speaking of generations of innovators, welcome to the 97 Demo, where we give you the latest in music news and a whole bunch along the way. I'm one of your three hosts, Nnamdi Igwanwu, joined by
Noah
and Avery.
Sometimes we do last names, other times we just like to make you guess. But we have a lot to get to this week, especially a super fun conversation about album reviews and why we care about them. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we have some headlines to get to. The first one I kind of love. I love whenever I see music and politics intersect. It's sort of, if you read our newsletter, you probably have a grasp that that's my thing. But this is really interesting because it's not so much like a musician doing something as much as a politician trying to exploit this insanity of a musician's fan base for political gain. So basically, Um, Virginia right now is going to be in a high stakes political election for governor. The Democrat running, his name is Terry McAuliffe. He ran back in the day. And one of the ways he has been trying to sort of tarnish his opponent is by highlighting the connection of his opponent, whose name is Glenn Youngkin, to the Carlisle Group, which, if you remember, is a group that Taylor Swift's master recordings were sold to. So now you have this one governor telling the people of Virginia, like, you know, my opponent is the reason that poor girl, Taylor Swift, couldn't manage to get her own music back. And he has so there's a bunch of ads that they're doing now that are going to appear all over social media in hopes of engaging with Swift's fans and making them, you know, get upset again. Like they're pushing the hashtag We Stand With Taylor again. And they're basically just banking on the fact that the youth will be upset at this politician for taking Taylor Swift's masters.
There's one word that comes to mind: desperate. It really does. Like, you know what? I don't know, man. This is like, it's interesting because like usually you see artists like in the capacity of like, you know, they'll bring an artist on. Like I remember when Hillary was running, like Pusha T was a big guy that was pushing for Hillary. I remember for Bernie Sanders, you know, Killer Mike was like Bernie Sanders' #1 fan. It's interesting to see artists used in this way. Well, she's not even really a part of the campaign or anything like that. He's just using, you know, kind of saying like, hey, these people bought Taylor Swift's masters. Be mad at them, and that's why you should vote for me. I don't know. It just feels like a really desperate strategy to get people to vote for him. I don't know. That's how it comes off to me. That's how it comes off to me. Because I don't know. Like, what's that say about like you? Well, I guess it doesn't say anything. It's just like, hey, vote for me because this other guy's bad. So,
I mean, I guess I kind of get that. I think the funnier thing is, and I guess the opponent would agree with, you know, because Glenn Youngkin said in a statement, Terry McAuliffe has reached the stage of desperation in his campaign where he's rolling out the baseless attacks to see what sticks. So that is like a spokesperson for Glenn Youngkin. But my thing is, really, if you're going to criticize this for anything, I don't think you criticize it for at least as a political stunt. Because I mean, I think, hey, it's worthwhile. It's not just about, it's not really a pathetic attack, but it's about engaging with younger fans who this may mean something to. Like you have to be 18 to vote. And I guarantee you there's some 18-year-olds in Virginia who saw this and were like, oh, that's kind of wild. Like he did that, especially with a name as high profile as Taylor Swift. And it's not like he was saying, oh, I love Fearless, or, oh, Taylor Swift's going to endorse us. He's saying, hey, my opponent did this thing that some people consider to be immoral. He backed a group taking her art, robbing Taylor Swift of the opportunity to, you know, to have control for music. And that's wrong. And he supported that. So I get it as a political stunt. And I do think it could potentially work, you know. If you are going to criticize this, I would say criticize it for the fact that Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat who did this, he at a point in his career invested in the group that he is bashing his opponent for being the co-founder of or the co-CEO of. That's why I would bash it, because it's like, that's ridiculous. The New York Times reported, or no, this wasn't the New York Times. Who did? The Associated Press reported that Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat, invested at least $690,000 in Carlisle Group between December 2007 and the end of 2016. Mind you, he's bashing his opponent for being the co-CEO of the Carlisle Group. So bash the hypocrisy, not the political stunt.
That's fair too. I mean, I would said all that because like that's just what politics have come down to, like just going at your opponent. That's just how it is these days. So that's a good point. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in politics on both sides anyway. So always surprised.
It's very 2016, 2020 era politics, if you catch my drift. But I'm really interested to see if this works or if this has any sort of effect.
Yeah,
if this was like right now, apparently the two of them, they're like 1% polling from each other. So at this point, anything could like give you the extra boost.
Sure. If this was like a presidential election, this would definitely be a SNL skit. But
this Loki should still be an SNL skit.
It sounds like one.
They might do it. You never know. SNL be pulling some stuff out the back.
Speaking of the intersection of music and politics,
and Virginia,
culture, maybe. And Virginia, wow, this resonates on so many levels. Oh, gosh. not me trying to pitch this for my actual job. But this week in our newsletter, I wrote about how Pharrell, I think, sort of set the bar for artists using their platform to sort of enact change. And it shows you what that looks like. So basically, here's the rundown. Earlier this year in February, or March, excuse me, Pharrell Williams' cousin, a man named Donovan Lynch, was shot by Virginia Beach police. It was sort of a chaotic scene. It was a night of fighting. Things were kind of wild. But his cousin was shot. There's been conflicting stories. Police say his cousin was brandishing a weapon. Witnesses say that's not true. He had a weapon, but it was concealed carry, and he had a permit. The officer, for some reason, was wearing a body camera, but it was turned off. That's raising red flags for people, and there hasn't really been that much action. I believe the state has now taken over the investigation from the city, but it's kind of been at a standstill. I don't think anyone's been fired. No one's been charged with anything, and that pisses a lot of people off when there's this idea that there was an injustice and nothing being done about it. So Pharrell's been really involved in Virginia Beach. That is his hometown. He's been talking to city leaders, saying, "Hey, let's do more. I need you to at a minimum host a city forum." Hear people's concerns. Let's figure out what we want to look like moving forward. He also called for a federal investigation, but of course that's up to Merrick Garland and the Biden administration, and not really, just the city leaders. But long story short, none of that happened, and I believe that the city even took some time before reaching out to the family. Like, it's just, Pharrell was upset about that, so he decided that he was going to take his festival, Something in the Water Festival, which he debuted in 2019 and was like massively successful. I'm talking about the lineup included like SZA and Migos and like just a whole bunch of people. I think Kate Trinata was there. Like it was a really, really successful show. Well, he's now removing it from Virginia Beach. And with that comes to millions of dollars in like tax revenue and like media attention and just tourism generally, right? And now, the city's kind of panicking. They're like, "Oh, well, can we talk about it? Like, hey, can you reconsider?" And who knows what actually is going to come out of this? Who knows if the result of this is going to be like any sort of investigation or charges? But it is a really good example of how you can actually use your platform to make a point, and to make a big point, because this city just lost millions of dollars in tax revenue. That means something to a budget. And I just think in the age where we're seeing so many entertainers start to talk like social justice and like, start to try to double, this is how you can actually show that you're invested in a cause, by putting your money on the line, as opposed to, I don't know, posting a picture of you in pants that say racism is bad.
Racism is evil.
Racism is evil. Or making an album with MLK samples and thinking you're woke.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, let me stop.
Wow.
No shade. A little shade. But
wow.
Actions are stronger than words. And Pharrell's doing the damn thing. So
it's interesting. Yeah, and especially because like Virginia Beach, like it's not like one of these huge cities like LA, Chicago, or something like that. Like that's like a city that like they're a known city, but they're not like a huge city in terms of like the amount of people are there and the amount of money that's poured in. So a big event like this, who like Pharrell's a huge pop star, producer, artist, when he's putting money into this, it's like they need that to support the community around. It kind of reminds me of like this is stupid, but when LeBron left Cleveland, a lot of people, they were talking about the businesses around the Cleveland area and the arena, and they really suffered, and the whole like economic standing suffered. And this is different because Pharrell's fighting for a cause, but obviously this is financially affecting the city, and then hopefully this can lead to some change in the city, especially since it's personal to Pharrell too. So I think this is a good thing. I think this is really dope. I agree with you guys. It's actions louder than words, and Pharrell's an example of that.
Shout out Pharrell. Let's get him on the pod.
I got you.
No, I know. I think Noah has the contact. We'll make that happen.
I got you.
Oh wait, I wanted to do this next week. We'll do it again next week, but he'll be here next week.
Someone who in the future might have Pharrell's contact.
Oh yeah, for sure. He definitely got interviewed.
I really don't even want to. I want to save some of this for next week, but I will say our good friend and 97 Demo informal honorary host Grant Sharpless.
You almost call him Sharples. You almost call him Sharples.
Almost, but I caught myself. But he got to interview James Blake ahead of the release of his latest studio album.
Friends that give you heartbreak. Friends that break your heart.
Friends That Break Your Heart, also the name of a great song on the album. And it was an interview. They touched on everything from the album's creation process to, I guess, some of the more challenging events that Blake went through over the last year. Grant's going to join us next week, so he'll be here to talk about it. But like, just shout out to him for just continuing to score like amazing reviews.
Yeah, definitely just wanted to highlight this from him.
Grant's
And
dope.
I like that we did that, a deep tease. Ooh, y'all better come back next week.
Grant's dope. Grant's super dope. Wait, we didn't say what's the tease for? Wait, are we doing a 90
We'll be
But,
talking
this
about
is a
James
tease. Let's just say
Blake.
this is, it's like a multi-part tease because we still have to get the new releases.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the first part of this tease is, let's just say James Blake is going to be coming back up. Wink, wink.
Y'all gonna be surprised how I feel about that. I'm gonna leave it alone. Getting into our main discussion, fellas. Speaking of reviews and whatnot. Obviously this week, our podcast, we do a lot of discussing about like, guys, what should we talk about? What's interesting in the news? And a couple days ago, I don't remember which one you guys sent this in the chat, but Pitchforks, I believe it was Avery, but I'm sorry, Nnamdi, if it was you. I believe Pitchfork basically put out a article saying Pitchfork reviews rescored. Pitchfork gets a lot of heat sometimes for some of their scores. Some of these albums that people love, fans love, but Pitchfork will give it a score. He's like, how in the world did they give this, that, and this other album, a higher score? And Pitchfork rescored a lot of albums. They had Knowledge on there. They had Lana Del Rey, Charlie XCX, Chief Keef, Daft Punk. Am I missing anything else? Any other artists I'm missing? They include a lot of artists.
Big Boy?
Big Boy. And
they did 19 in total.
19 in total, yeah. And essentially, they went back and rescored some of these albums.
Wait. Did they made the Chief Keef a 9?
Yeah, people, bro, that's a classic, bro. That's a classic, bro. Like, don't say that in the wrong crowd. Don't say that in the wrong crowd.
I wouldn't say it in Chicago, but I say it in like Gwinnett County, Georgia. Sorry.
I don't know, but people in Georgia think that's a classic too, though. That album was huge. But yeah, essentially they're rescoring albums, and not all the albums got a better score. Like some scores went from like 5 to 7, but some albums like Big Boy, Sir Lucius Left Foot, the son of Chico Dusty, went from 9.2 to 7.7. So they brought some scores down. But this essentially inspired me to, for us to talk about basically why people care so much about album reviews and reviews come out. There's so many, people reviewing music, including us. There's people on YouTube. There's people that write, our friend Grant, podcasts everywhere. And essentially there's certain people, godly, they gave it a 0. There's essentially a lot of people in the in general that get really excited about certain reviews. For example, Fantano, when he puts a review, people are like, oh my gosh, Me and Avery talk about it all the time about when we see a review from him. It's like, oh, did you see what he gave? And in a lot of cases, this can sometimes sway a fan to listen to it or not listen to it, or ruin their perspective on the album, how they feel about it. And also, naturally, artists can get super frustrated and angry and frustrated about it and go at the reviewer also. So I want to talk about overall the culture of reviewing albums, why people care so much, and why it's such a big deal in the music industry as a whole, and especially on social media too. So there I go. So why do you guys think fans do care so much about album reviews? Why do you think it's such a big deal in this industry, especially, just in general, especially on social media, where you can see, everybody can see everybody's thoughts and how people feel about it?
I think it's because music is so subjective, and sometimes it can be hard to articulate your feelings on a song or whether or not you even like something. How many times have you listened to a song that you thought you hated, then like 5 listens later, like, oh, or how many times have you thought you liked a song, and then before you know it, it feels like super annoying on the radio. But I think we as humans underestimate how much we value like a story or a narrative, even with the song we listen to. And we typically try to search for one whenever anything drops. Oh, this is like the best album. This is the worst album. This is so-and-so's, best project since XYZ. People enjoy being able to have those conversations, but I just think sometimes they need help having those conversations. And that's why people turn to reviews. I think it's also a form of like quality control that people look for. Like they go to their trusted publications or something to ensure that to find that like validity in their music taste. They feel like they're still only listening to the best, most quality stuff, and they have some reason put faith in a random person's opinion over their own. So I think it's really just because music is very, very subjective, and sometimes it's hard to figure out how you feel about something as opinion based.
Avery?
I think especially with like our social media discourse, where like our attention spans are so short, like everyone wants to think that they're listening to the best or the worst thing in that moment, right? Like you can think about it in terms of sports with like, our generation or people among our generation thinking that LeBron's the greatest player of all time. And people who are older want to say that like Michael Jordan was the greatest player. People older than that want to say that like Kareem or Bill Russell were the greatest players of all time. Like you want to believe that in this moment you are watching the best thing that has ever existed in that moment. Because it's fun to talk about and it's fun to debate people, and it's fun to get in arguments with people on like Twitter about that kind of stuff. So I think that like if you see someone who disagrees with you, it's fun to just go at them about that thing.
That's interesting you say it's fun, because sometimes I think of it as like almost toxic damn near, because like how people are just going at people, because the number one reason is like just music is such a really personal thing, to a lot of people, like just in general, like speaking on like J. Cole, for example. J. Cole has a really particular fan base who finds his music really personal, very relatable. And, when somebody comes in saying, hey, this is terrible, what he's talking about is stupid, this line is stupid. I remember people saying like, I remember when Forest Hills Drive came out, and, he had this, J. Cole had this song, Nnamdi, you remember, I don't remember off the top of my head, where he's talking about essentially losing his virginity. And, there's a lot of people that are saying like, yeah, Wet Dreams. And people are like, oh, that's so corny. You talking about losing your virginity, you're a grown man. But to a lot of his fans, people college age, high school age, that was really relatable and a really personal song to them. That's like, oh, I can relate to that. That's what it was like for my first time. And when you see somebody going at it, it can essentially cause, basically, emit a lot of emotions from a person. Like, me and Avery were talking about this number one Drake fan who argued Fantano over CLB. This isn't that great as this isn't an example of that, because this is essentially like a stan just essentially going at it and basically not understanding why Fantano hates an album, which is another part too. I think the music industry and the music culture as a whole is it's not super understanding. Like I feel like when I'm talking to you guys, I'm like, hey guys, I don't like it. I'm not saying it's terrible. It's just for me, this doesn't work. Or I can see, like, for example, Isaiah Rashad, The House Was Born. I love Isaiah Rashad. I love that album. But I can see why somebody like Avery doesn't like it. But I don't think that reflects the music, the people on social media and fans as a whole. Do you agree or disagree with that? Because, no, go ahead. You guys disagree or agree with that?
Well, disagree with like the idea that your opinion shouldn't dictate what like everyone else thinks.
No, I was saying, do you think, because I think when I'm talking to you guys, I think we don't reflect the larger culture of fans that are unable to see another side of somebody's opinion. Like, for example, Avery can be like, yo, Isaiah Rashad, he's cool, but that album wasn't for me because I'm like, oh, I could see that, but I just disagree with that, but I can see that. I'm saying the larger culture of music fans can be like, yo, I hate this CLB, this song, and you're like, how can you not see that? How can you not see that he's doing, like, how do you guys feel about it?
I think it's like dually, like one, it takes maturity, I think, on a base level to be able to say, okay, well, I don't like something, but this is my opinion and I see how you feel about it, or just open-mindedness to say, I may have hated this, but I'm going to listen to it again through a new lens and see what I think. So I think one is maturity, but two, I think is just that people have really strong emotional attachments to music. The whole point of a good song is that you can you're listening to it, but you sort of can, typically it's relatable, or you can see yourself through it, or you identify with it for some reason. So if you identify strongly with an artist or an album and then you see someone crap on it, you may the argument is no longer like, oh, well, this album is good. It sort of becomes like it's a personal offense to me because my identity, like I relate to this album so strongly. So it feels like you're offending me by insulting this album. I can say as that J. Cole fan, there were times like in high school or college where I'd be so frustrated with people who would make statements like that. Oh, like Wet Dreams is dumb because, who would ever do that or whatever. And it's like, well, no, like that's relatable. Or even Folding Clothes, which on For Your Eyes Only, which I know everyone hates and everyone to this day makes fun of that song. I love that song because I think, hey, it is just his version of a love song. Like what I don't get the hate. And I also think that goes into that kind of goes into like the toxicity of rap and this expectation that like any kind of sentimental or like emotion or vulnerability is immediately seen as like weak and hated on. But that's another conversation. I just think people really, really care because they just start to see themselves in music. And when you start to see yourself in music, you're going to do whatever you can to defend it.
It's so interesting you mentioned that particular song because I was one of the people at the time. I was like, this song is so stupid. What is he talking about? It's so stupid. And looking back on that song is not as stupid as like I remember. And that's also to the point of like people's just feelings in the moment. You know what I'm saying? Like we just got off a month of like toxic albums fighting each other with Drake and Kanye, but essentially like in the moment for a lot of people, Donda was like, oh my gosh, this is too long, it's ridiculous, he's going on and on, it's a super long album. And I think that has a lot of people are selfish and they can't really think ahead of how they will feel down the line. And in the moment, for Donda, for a lot of people, it's just bad. It just wasn't good, for, what I'm saying? And that's happened for a lot of albums. Like, just speaking on Kanye, for me, like the Life of Pablo, in the moment when I first listened to it, the day it came out, when he was having that listening party at Madison Square Garden, I was streaming it. I was like, this is not for me. This is not good. And going back and listening to that album, it's a lot better. So I think a lot of people just have strong feelings in the moment because they can't just think of anything else. Essentially,
not even that. No, I think Donda's not a great example because I think a lot of people like Donda too, personally.
Yeah, but a lot of people hate it. I'm saying it's split enough.
Think like a good example of that is Jesus, though, where that was almost immediately panned. Like nobody wants to give that a chance. And I think that sort of goes back to my earlier point that people just like to search for narratives when they're listening to music. And what I mean by that is it's easier to jump on a train, right, of this album sucks, or this is whack, or this song is like hilariously bad because he's talking about wanting to fold clothes for his girlfriend. Like it's easier to just jump on a story that's already getting like heat than to try to figure out your own opinions and like independently feel that way. And I think that's something even referenced in Pitchfork in their review of people. Like one good example that stood out is Liz Phair. They redid that score and it went from a 0 to like a 6. And part of his like reasoning for it in that Pitchfork review of Liz Phair was
sorry.
Part of the reasoning for it was him sort of saying like it was cool in the early 2000s to hate on like an indie rock singer who wanted to do a pop album. Like it was cool to hate on it. And now, years later, that we see that, well, that's been sort of the route a lot of people have taken, starting in like a niche genre, then transitioning to your pop, whatever. That's become cool now. But in the early 2000s, it's a thing you just kind of crapped on. That's sort of how I feel people look at a lot of music and why people go to reviews, because people like to have that built in, like whatever, like what's considered cool and what's considered not cool. And that is honestly, I don't even want to say that's solely fans. I think that's like a cultural thing. It's just like the same way sports is competitive, music is competitive, but music is subjective. So like reviews and those ideas and those themes are so much more important because like, a Pitchfork reviewer in 2003 saying, well, Liz Phair gets a 0 because I think it's whack that she, you know, did a pop album instead of an indie rock album. Well, I'm sure that could have affected her critically, and maybe now award shows aren't looking at her because she got the 0 on Pitchfork, you know. So like the industry itself is built on this idea of like criticism and like quality and like, you know, where we take this super subjective thing and try to rank it. And anytime you do that, you're just gonna like open yourself up to situations where all of a sudden people hate on a really good album because it's cool to hate on it.
I think like reviews in that sense have become like a little more important now, because like I'm not gonna act like I knew what quote unquote discourse was like before. You know, I'm only 23 years old, but like but like you know,
17, that's wild.
You know, on Twitter you get 280 characters to put out your thought. Like we don't have nuance, right? And it's, you know, people might be too lazy to put out more than one tweet saying what they thought, so it's easier to say like, hey, this thing's trash, instead of like, oh, I didn't like it because of this and this and this, what do you think? You know, you'd rather just get a rise out of someone and be like, this sucks. So like I think in that sense reviews have become more important because they provide that extra detail and nuance into why something maybe wasn't as good as people are saying, or maybe is like worse than people are saying. But also it's just one person's opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why journalism is important to me, because like that's a form of journalism. I think context is important for everything. And
Ooh, wait, can we talk about that? Are music reviews a form of journalism though?
What'd you say?
Are music reviews a form of journalism though? I'd love to grant that.
I consider it a form of to me it's like similar to like somebody doing a column, which I consider like journalism also. You know, like it's all in the same stratosphere to me. That's how I feel. But so yeah, that's how I feel. But yeah, you know, just like I was gonna say, like just like there's tastemakers in fashion and other things, you know, you need certain people to see these things. Like I need Kanye to see this fashion brand, or I need Virgil Abloh. There's the same thing in music, and that's kind of moving me on to my next point about, you know, artists getting really frustrated and angry, and why do artists care so much about album reviews? And this kind of is bringing me back to the conversation we had about the Grammys a while back. We were talking about, you know, why should people care about the Grammys? You know, kind of a similar conversation in a different area. And, you know, we were talking about how, you know, if you're not nominated for a Grammy, that could affect, you know, your bottom line. You know, that could affect the amount of people that want to work with you. If you have Grammy nominated, you know, in your title, you know, it opens you up for artists and, you know, getting signed to a label, working with particular producers. And there's certain reviewers that if they're giving you a positive or negative review, that can really affect the amount of fans that are going to your album, the amount of new fans that go to your album and whatnot. And so I just want to talk about, why do you think artists care so much about album reviews? Even though I kind of already gave a little synopsis right there.
Yeah, I'm like, you answered the question that you're asking.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like you said, because I think they have to. I think artists care about reviews because they have to care about reviews. The industry demands them to care about reviews. For the same reason, I think the Grammys are still important, because we as a society have ascribed value to it, and then music as an industry has ascribed like value to it, to like acclaim and what people think. Which is frustrating again, because music is subjective. So ideally there's no such thing as a bad album, right? But we have as a culture decided this set of people or these publications or these writers or these whatever, they get to ascribe value and dictate what good and bad means in music. And because of that, everyone else has to fall in line. So musicians care because they have to care. Again, like you getting that 0 on Pitchfork almost means like you're probably not going to be nominated for anything that year. And if you care about that, that sucks. You know, you getting a low score or having your album get low scores all around, well, that's going to impact the commercial sales of your project, because all of a sudden fans like me are going to say, well, I'm not going to waste an hour of my life listening to an album that has a 2 on Pitchfork. Like, that's why people care. That's why artists care, because everything in the industry hinges on the reception to your music. And it's like a form of gatekeeping kind of, I think. But I mean, I don't think there's a scenario where they don't care. I think even when artists are like, well, I don't do it for the blogs, I do it for my fans. I think, no, you care. Like, come on. So I don't know. I don't think they have a choice.
Do you guys let reviews like dictate whether you're listening to an album or not? Like if it's a new album?
If it's an artist I care, well, yeah, I think everyone does. And if you say you don't, I think you're a liar, because I think it's like, of course, if it's an artist that you're a big fan of, right? I don't think you're going to care about a review. Like if Pitchfork gave KOD a 2, I'd still listen to KOD because I love J. Cole, right? Mm-hmm. But if it's an artist that you're lukewarm about, it absolutely does. And again, I think you're lying if you say it doesn't. Like, I think if you look at a whole bunch of reviews and for an artist that you're just, who's an artist that I'm very in the middle about? For G-Eazy. If G-Eazy puts out an album and everyone says, oh, well, this is a 3. This is a 3. New York Times is a 3. Complex is a 3. Pitchfork is a 3. Guess what? I'm not listening, because it's like, well, I don't want to spend an hour and a half listening to a 3. So, you know, I think and that's why people care about reviews, because there's so much value and so many cascading effects that can happen all because of like whatever number someone gave your album.
You almost have to like listen to an album before any sort of reviews come out to like be like, you know, like, oh, I actually do like this, and then like you'll see like, oh, Pitchfork didn't like it, that kind of sucks, oh well, and then I'm gonna keep listening to it because I think it sounds good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I listened to this Don Toliver album I was thinking like this Don Toliver album that came out this week. I don't know if it's gonna be received well, but like I liked it. I thought it sounded really cool, and I don't know if I would have listened to it if I saw that, you know, let's say Pitchfork gives it a 2, you know.
And even Meek Mill last week, I made a conscious effort not to look at any reviews before I listened to that album. Like Expensive with a Fine, sorry, like something.
Expensive Pain, something like that. It's like
Expensive Pain, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I made a concerted effort not to listen to reviews. I know a lot of people, again, with the whole narrative we like to search for it. Meek Mill's narrative is like, oh, well, he's corny, he can't rap.
He screams.
And I know because of that, that's going to impact the scores he gets. So I knew, I was like, well, I'm going to listen to this album with a clean palette. And I think us, well, I don't want to speak for all of us, but us, whenever we agree that we're reviewing an album, I don't look at any reviews. Before I listen. Like, I always listen to the music with a fresh palette and take my own notes and figure out my own thoughts. And then if I want to, maybe afterwards, I'll say, okay, well, let's see what the New York Times thinks. But like, no, I think Avery, to your point, yeah, I think the only way to really consume music in a fair way is to not listen to any reviews before. But unfortunately, we don't have a culture that tends to do that. So.
Yeah. It's interesting. And also in kind of the opposite way, I kind of use reviews sometimes to validate my feelings. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I like my project of the week. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this freaking album. I saw a review and they were like, oh yeah, this album is great. And I was like, oh yeah, I really like this album now, you know? And, you know, I think that's just, you know, natural of like how we are as people. It's like, if you love something and you find somebody else that loves something, it's a good feeling. But when you find somebody that's respected, that's validated, that has a lot of influence, you're like, wow, I must really like, this album must really be good because, you know, this person who's a respected a critic in the industry also agrees with me. So I think that's really good.
It's confirmation bias, right? Like, you just want to be, you know, if I see that, like, I'm a Yankees fan, if the Yankees played well one night, I'm gonna read like 3 things about it. Like, I want to relive that game.
Yeah, when the Yankees lose, Avery's
then I'm not gonna read anything. Like, leave me alone.
And no, I think that's really like what you said. I think that's fascinating, and I think that's very, very accurate. Like, a lot of people will go to a review afterwards to get like, I want to see if I'm right. And again, I think that's sort of like what we're talking about, the whole thing about how we want to make sure we're like, you know, the critics agree with us, that, you know, we have the right read on this, that whatever narrative we think about this album, like, other people feel that way too. I think it all goes into this culture that explains why reviews are so important. And again, this isn't limited to music. Literally everything now, especially with Yelp, like everything is held to the same. Reviews matter, and literally
there's critics in everything.
The food industry, whether it is movies, whether it is
tech.
TV, like tech, like, it's all the same purpose of, as humans, we try to find meanings in things, and we want to make sure the meaning is good. And, you know, we want to make sure that, like, our opinions are valid. We want to make sure that our favorite artists. Sorry, I thought I heard someone knocking on my door. Sorry.
I missed a fly. Don't worry about
it. They gonna be thinking like Avery living in the gutter, bro. They're like, yo, Avery, where are you at, bro?
But wait, Avery, can I mean, not even Avery, Noah, I want to get to the 2 links you have under why do artists care so much. So so transition me there, or I can transition how you get us there.
For sure. Yeah, those are, you know, when this Fantano reviewed The House is Burning by Isaiah Rashad, we talked about this on that review. But, you know, he gave it a really bad, not like a 2, but he wasn't really high on the album. And Isaiah Rashad and a lot of people in the TDE camp were basically saying like, yo, who are you to review black music? How can you do that? Like, you're not valid. You're not, you shouldn't be able to give this album that's really black, clearly, and be able to criticize it. And and Isaiah Rashad got really mad about it. But Fantano was really somebody that was really open to discussing and having discourse about, how he feels, why he feels like this and stuff like that. So yeah.
I have so many strong opinions about this. Let me just start it by saying I look at this the same way I look at journalists and any other sort of publication. If you're white, you can cover a black topic or a black story. You just have to do the extra work to make sure you are prepared to do so, that you can understand the nuances, you can understand the context, and maybe, ask the black person around you for their thoughts and opinions. Now, whether or not that black person has to give you their thoughts and opinions, no, but I think you have to do that extra legwork if you want to be someone who covers black culture, black news, black whatever. The same way that, if I'm covering a community that I'm not in, I know that I have to do the extra work to consider any biases I may have. I have to do the extra work to consider any blinders I have that may not make me see something in the full light, any context that may be important here. And I think just the same way certain journalists can get that wrong in news stories, the same thing can happen in reviews. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Now, the problem with that is I'm not sure The House is Burning is a great instance of that, because the truth is I don't see what black culture is being like spewed out in that album beyond it being a R&B hip hop album. And if that's the bar, if it's just saying, oh, anything in this genre you shouldn't be allowed to cover, I don't really agree with that. Yeah. But a better example would be, I'm again referencing this Pitchfork thing. Avery, you don't have to go because look, that your computer's trying its best, so you don't have to go back. But one of the scores Pitchfork redid was Musicology by Prince, which I haven't listened to. I'm not going to front, but their reasoning for it was, well, this is an album that examined Prince's own catalog and the history of like black music and jazz fusion gospel. If you're a white 19-year-old reviewing that album, you may miss a lot of that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why it makes sense to me that score could go up, because now they can say, okay, maybe when I first reviewed this, it wasn't, things to consider. Lemonade's another example. That was universally loved, but like, if you may not understand Lemonade, if you are like, I don't want to keep on saying if you're white, because it's more than that. But if you're not black and aware of Southern culture, you may not get Lemonade. But luckily the world did. But that's an example of it. So I think anyone can cover anything. You just have to acknowledge when you need to put in the extra work. And I just think a lot of people tend to miss that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're good at your job, you should be able to cover every part of that job. You should be able to do that job to its fullest extent, including situations that make you uncomfortable.
I agree. But, like Nnamdi said, sometimes those biases are just like kind of just built within you, and they're things that are just you're not thinking about, you know what I'm saying? And even though journalists and people are trained to be able to cover all kinds of topics, there's bias that you're gonna have no matter what that will come out that you don't even realize. And and that's something that happened. I kind of think about To Pimp a Butterfly too. I remember when the album came out, I remember people in high school, people I went to school with, they were like, oh my gosh, this album is stupid, what is he doing, what's that music behind it? And now looking back, that people, whether you're white or black or whatever, I see people that are older now that their music palette has changed, and they love that album now. So yeah. But
can I bring up like this Wale thing, because I think it's still in the family of like cultural things. So the question we sort of answered was about like an individual cover something, but I do think there's also worth noting that like publications also have to consider their own biases. And I don't think that happens at all, especially when you see top 50, top 500, end of the year. Literally what that is most of the time is a predominantly white group of people with their own opinions, just picking their favorite albums and like ranking them on a list, And that is like the perfect formula. If there's not enough people that look like you and me in that room to leave off a ton of albums that may have had huge cultural impact, And that happens every time I feel like I see one of these lists. Now, I would admit that I think as the years have gone on, some of these publications try, even if they still are predominantly white, you'll see more black albums, more low-key, maybe black album that didn't get a lot of attention. Maybe just you'll see more LGBT representation. You'll see that diversity, which is good. But you know, in 2013, I can understand why Wale may have been pissed for being left off the top 50, Complex's top 50 albums of 2013 list, because he definitely had one of the best albums. I'll give Wale that from 2013.
I think that's the year when Ambition came out, which was like a big album.
Is that Lotus Flower Bomb?
Yeah, last Lotus Flower Bomb.
Imagine not putting and that was.
He got nominated for a Grammy.
That got nominated, and then Complex dropped their top 50. And don't let me Google that list, because I know I'm gonna get mad. So you know, it's like.
I don't think it was.
It's important for publications to consider the biases they have as a unit. Consider who's making that list, who your editors are, and like adjust accordingly.
Yo, you see the words he said, but you know, and I think that's something also. You know, while we're kind of transitioning.
The only thing y'all promote from black people is ghetto stuff. That's what Wale said in this video, and I want to highlight that that's another criticism.
He was going and
see. I may write about this because it's a thing. To then overcompensate maybe for like the lack of black albums. The albums they do choose will have to be like stereotypically black, or like what we think hip hop should be, as opposed to what Wale's saying here. You only like these sort of albums. You don't like anything that shows me as something more than like just being a street dude, you know?
Yeah,
which I think it's fair for 2013. Sorry.
And it's funny because Wale later he did an interview with Seinfeld. Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld. He's good friends Jerry Seinfeld, and he talked about the list. But yeah, that's interesting. And I think also now, I think I get less mad about these lists than I did like 5 years ago. But, you know, now I realize now like Complex is going to lean, and not even talking about in terms of like black music, but Complex is going to lean rap. They're going to lean rap and R&B, you know, instead of like a pop or indie album. Like we've talked about this. And then like another publication like Rolling Stone will be maybe more inclusive and lean rock and indie and alternative. And I think that's something to take note of when you're looking at these reviews too, because sometimes these, you know, Pitchfork, they review everything, but a lot of places like Complex, they're doing rap albums. They're really heavy on rap, R&B, things in that stratosphere essentially, which is interesting. I don't want to like go over time because I think we're doing good with time, but I kind of want to transition to like this thing on the Ringer wrote about Out of the Pan. What's the point of a bad review? And I was kind of. And the reason I want to talk about this, because even though we're talking about, you know, how we review things, positive reviews, how we use it to validate our feelings, I think people oftentimes are fascinated with something being bad. Who can review the baddest, worst album and give it the harshest criticism ever and be like, this is the worst thing ever, I can't understand it, and I think there's often a fascination with that, because often the times the reviews that are going viral, people are talking about a lot of the ones that are getting bad reviews. Nobody's saying like, yo, oh my gosh, unless it's like just an amazing album, but people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they gave this review a 10. You know what I'm saying? That's not like a thing that's popular. It's usually like, oh my gosh, they gave Donda a 2, they gave this a 3, they gave, you know, I keep saying Donda. Donda is not that bad. I'm just that's just the first thing that pops in my head.
Yeah, go ahead. You know, that's saying Donda. Go ahead, because you could be saying CLB just the same.
You're right. First of all, I gave Donda a higher score, so let's chill. But yeah, I think there's often a fascination with the bad reviews that a project can get. And why do you think there's such a fascination with that in the culture also, with like, yo, I mean, we have an episode going back where we just basically took a dump on Lil Uzi's album, and you know what I'm saying? And it was something we had fun doing. But yeah, it was fun at the time.
If you ever get retroactively canceled, it'll be for that one.
It was for that one, exactly. But yeah, why do you guys think that people love these bad reviews that are just bashing?
I want to like take it back to the Twitter thing, or like just how we operate now and how we like want to talk about stuff now. It's, you know, it's fun to get mad at people, and it's like what was the last album that was popular that you saw the whole timeline agreeing on? That was good. Like that the entire time I was like, wow, well, this is a great album, and they were celebrating it.
That's tough. I'm not gonna lie.
I feel like people like Brockhampton, right?
No, that's not good.
I mean like really popular.
No, Tom
like everyone was listening to, you know, like it doesn't happen.
Lemonade. Sure. That was 5 years ago though. So
it's just like
this hasn't come out, but I feel like Silk Sonic album is going to be universal.
I guarantee you, there's going to be someone.
the bar they've set for themselves putting this single
True.
out a year early, there's gonna be people saying, "Oh, that's just trash."
It's just
Worth
like,
it.
and also like, you know, I think of like between us three, I was thinking of that Vince Staples album that came out. We really did not disagree. We didn't like that guy's evaluation of Vince Staples so much that we tweeted at him and he responded. Like, it's so fun to see a quote that's crazy, and there are a lot of crazy quotes in this Ringer article, and like, you know, have that circulate around and everyone be like, wow, like, I can't believe that person said that about this album.
Yeah.
And I feel like this takes me straight back to the J school, where the first thing you learn when you want to be a journalist, and you know, is that people have a fascination for the negative. Like, war stories always do better than good stories. Like stories about gangs and violence and like arrests, and like that's what people are entertained in. People like being scared a little bit, and I think that extends to sort of just the not necessarily the fear angle, but just our fascination with conflict is the reason why like bad reviews are almost always going to do better. People like seeing someone be upset and angry and like they hope for a fight to break out. I'm sure people love the fact that like Wale went off on Complex in 2013, which by the way was not for Ambition, but it was for the album that had Gift. Bad on it. And if you remember what Bad is, you know that was a hit. So still upset. But I think that's what it is. There's this. Sorry, can y'all hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I thought it was a repeat of last week for a second. I got scared.
We got you.
But that's like sort of like what my thinking for this is just people like the negative. And I will say on top of that though, you know how in movies, actors will always say it's more fun to play the villain than the hero because you have more freedom as the villain. Like you can be goofier and you can do.
Or like in wrestling.
Or in wrestling, perfect. In wrestling, like being the heel is way more fun than being the face. I think that's the same thing in reviews when you're writing them. Like when you're writing a review, and they say that in Ringer, when you're writing a review, it's you can be wittier, you can make more jokes, you can show off your writing more, and you can showcase this as another form of art. I think that's something that I love that this article really highlighted, but I feel it gets understated a lot, that reviewing is a form of art. It's writing. It's a form of expression. Being able to listen to something and articulate your feelings about it is art. So when you have a negative review, it's more fun to be able to say stuff. But I want to read what Avery just highlighted. What does that say? An unapologetically mean review too is a big swing and the ultimate weapon for passionate but principled critics who want to love everything but will not hesitate to really hate something. Like that's what it is. Like it's just people love to. It's as a writer, it's cool. It's when you can shine. It's like, how can I say I hate this in the most wittiest, funniest, relatable way?
Ooh, stay right there, Avery. Yeah, I agree with you, and it's interesting because we have the newsletter now, and I find myself having a more I'm not gonna say enjoyable time, but it's a lot easier. Like the words come to me better when I'm like saying something negative.
And you were the villain for the first 3 weeks. So like,
yeah, exactly. And I did a newsletter on Hiatus Coyote, and I love their music. And I found myself, because I just like am so in love with with the album. When you love something so much, you can't really find the words. You're like, oh my god, it's just great. Yeah. And I found myself struggling writing that. But when there's stuff I have a problem with, like long albums or whatever, the words kind of come to me because I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible, it's stupid. Just the adjectives come to me easier. And this is just a funny example about this Greta Van Fleet review. And Avery, if you want to open the tab to the Larson tweet, this of which one of the people, basically Pitchfork gave this album a terrible review. And essentially there was like a headline. It's so funny. Barstool's Sports Row. It basically it says, did Greta Van Fleet F somebody at Pitchfork's girlfriend? Music review site gives their new album a 1.6. It's like, golly, man. Like that, it's so funny because like that, just the amount of reaction that will come from like a bad review, and you're not gonna get that with a positive review. So,
and for our audio listeners who missed the context, Jeremy Larson's a Pitchfork reviewer who, when reviewing Greta Van Fleet's debut album, gave it like a 1 and shit it dumped on it in the review. So like yeah, that was someone being like, what happened for Pitchfork to get so upset at Greta Van Fleet that they wrote that view?
This like review. Really young new band.
Yeah. So I think that's the call, and I do think reviews are hard sometimes, including us. Like you know, when we like, I know we're gonna do something different when we're like going back and scoring albums. We're gonna do something like that in the future, hopefully. But rescoring albums. But I think a lot of people are just harder in the moment. I think that's just the truth. And you know, I've gone back and listened to albums that I didn't like. I'm like, wow, I still don't love it, but it's not as bad as I made it, for sure. So yeah. So,
you know, and I want to point out that I think another thing to remember with reviews is like these numbers stay in stone. Like even Pitchfork, if you read their intro, they tell you like, if we could change them, this is what we do, but we're not changing them. You know what I mean? Like that 0 is still a 0 for Old Girl. So I think that's another reason why like I don't think they should be rushed. I don't really trust any review that comes out
next
days
day.
of, unless, you know, even though sometimes people will get a screener a little bit early so they can have time with the album. But, you know, I think you have to give it the time and try to be fair because, again, these are set in stone. It's hard to get things off the internet, you know?
I agree, which is why I think we do a good job personally on our podcast, you know, bigging ourselves up. We don't, you know, we love an album. We like, oh, we want to review it. We always try to wait another week just to give it the time and respect it deserves because, you know, it's tough to get, you know, your total thoughts off in just one sitting of something, you know, or 2 sittings. Like,
and
you know,
I do want to point out, Noah, that one thing in that I liked in the Ringer piece, The Art of the Pan, is they talked to this guy who reviews for the Washington Post, who like has just been just not a fan of Post Malone, not his music, not his concerts, not anything, and has just kind of dumped on him a lot. And because Post Malone is so popular among young people, he gets like, you know, threats like in his inbox, people be going ham on him and on Twitter, like they go crazy on him. And you know, he was asked at some point in this piece if like, do you do this to get your revenge? And he says, no, like, I don't care, because here's the thing. Nothing is personal in criticism if you're doing it the right way. Asterisk. It's art. You're doing art. And I think this is his words. I think that's this weird misunderstanding now because everything has become this me personal, like this is my brain, all that BS. Criticisms, art, and culture, that's 1,000 of years old, this tradition. It's one that's probably broken down on the rocks right now. But like I said, I assume Post Malone's a pretty nice guy. So that part, last sentence didn't matter. But the point being, this is an art form. And he has another line in here that I couldn't find, but he says, my little words aren't gonna hurt Post Malone's checks. Like Post Malone is at the level of fame where I can crap on him and he will be fine. And that's like what my thing is with like my Drake reviews, or y'all know I can't stand Justice. Like I can criticize Justin Bieber every day because I have the right to, and I can showcase my art form, which is writing, in that manner. Justin Bieber is still Justin Bieber though. He's still gonna be rich. He's still gonna be fine. My words won't hurt him. So I do think even though it's worth criticizing bad reviews, us as a culture have to understand that like it's part of the game. Like if you submit your work into this public forum with the hopes that so many people in our society will tap into it, that you'll become rich and famous, then you have to understand that part of that is it goes through like a critical tunnel. Like we're gonna look at it, we're gonna review, we're gonna consider it. That's part of the game. And I think that's why I get a little bit peeved when artists target reviewers, even if it's frustrating or crap. That's why I wasn't a fan of you know, everyone from TDE coming at old dude Fantano, because like for me it's like this is his art form. You had your art form, this is mine, and you can't get mad at an opinion because hey, you're making money, unless you think it's an issue. Like I think they were arguing with Fantano of you don't understand this because you're not black, which you know, but
I didn't think that was valid either. But
like even the most, you know, famous of famous reviewers, like my favorite movie of all time is Die Hard, and the most famous movie reviewer of all time is Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert famously does not like Die Hard, or famously did not like Die Hard. They gave it like 2 stars. And, you know, now to this day, it's the most widely imitated action movie of all time. If you've seen an action movie, it's probably imitating Die Hard in some way, right? Like the most famous reviewer of all time could not tank what is the most influential action movie of all time. So I think at the end of the day, people who review and people who are very good at reviewing are people who are very good at articulating their feelings about art.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, we all as a culture have to do a better job of responding to that, because let's not forget when Taylor Swift got an 8 on Folklore and her fans doxed that particular critic, which is insane. But yeah, so you know, this isn't necessarily like a solution on like how people can do better. It's kind of like, you know, it's just like, it's kind of a thing where like this is just a reality of the situation, and kind of like this is a positive and can be a negative, because like reviews can be a big thing that can help a lot of people. You know, if Pitchfork gives an album out of nowhere a good score, that could bring a lot of people to their music. But also like the Greta Van Fleet thing, which is interesting because like it was a brand new a group trying to, you know, break into the industry, and they gave it such a bad score, and that could have negatively affected their career. So I think that's interesting.
You know, I do think there's a takeaway we have to ask ourselves so we don't look like hypocrites, because we do reviews. So what's why do we think we do reviews? Like sort of with this discussion we just had, like, I don't know, I just like there has to be an acknowledgement that we do this thing too. So like, what are we gleaning from this? Like, why do you guys think we do reviews, and are we part of this problem, I guess?
I think for us, like, we're not critics, we're fans. And I think what we're trying to convey here is that, like, we're three guys who you can trust and who are fans about music that, like, are coming at this from just a fan's perspective of like, hey, we like this album, I hope you like our taste in music, you should too. Like, I hope. But
also I think we're in the minority essentially that, like, even though we'll disagree on like albums of how much we like it, but I think we're reasonable enough to see like, hey, I can see why Nnamdi, you don't like this album. Avery, I can see why you don't like this. Like, I think we're really in the minority in terms of like, if three guys were talking about music, they're gonna be like, how can you not see that this is an amazing thing? And how can you not see that? Like, I think we're reasonable enough to be like, I understand why you feel this way, even though I disagree with you. You know what I'm saying? But that's not just the culture of like reviews in general. Like, people are gonna be like, I don't see why you can't like this. I can see why, but you know, I trust you guys enough, and I trust how we interact with each other, that I can be reasonable in terms of like, we can agree to disagree and leave it at that. You know, a lot of people can't.
The people at Pitchfork are probably like that too, though.
I agree too.
I think we just have it easier, truth be told, because we don't review everything. We only review things that we think we're gonna like. That's just, and you know, and that's true. That is the biggest thing that separates, I think, us from like a Pitchfork, and why we do have to extend grace to other publications, because they do everything basically. You know, at least they try to do. Yeah. And we literally only review things that we at least think going in we're going to enjoy. Sometimes we're disappointed, so that leads to lower reviews. I think so. I think either it's a huge release or something that we think we're gonna like.
True. I agree.
And that gives us something to consider, because I think, to Avery's point, we do take the perspective of being like just fans who like music. But I'm, you know, as Avery was saying that, even though I agreed, I then started struggling to think, okay, well, couldn't like anyone who worked for any publication also say they take, you know, they're just fans of music, they're like talking about it? Like, absolutely. I'm not sure that distinguishes us enough. Yeah, I agree. But I think it's really just being honest and saying, well, we just like to review things we like, which makes it easier for us to not like do horrible reviews.
Well, also, like, the reality of criticism is that, like, you're gonna, well, I don't know, okay, maybe this is different for other people, but like, I like watching Fantano's video because he's a guy I can trust, and he's a guy who I think, like, my opinion generally aligns with. Yeah. But if I see a guy who like never likes albums that I like, I'm probably not going to read that person.
Or someone who comes off as like open, like closed-minded to albums
exactly.
I like. That's another thing that I think is big that we should bring up, is the fact that we listen to such a broad swath of music that we're not going to trash something because it's different. And I think a lot of reviewers have a reputation for trashing things because they feel different. A la Yeezus. Wait, didn't Yeezus get a 10 from someone? Who gave Yeezus a 10?
Pitchfork gave it a high score. Pitchfork gave it a high score.
Okay, well, you know, one thing Pitchfork did right, but a lot of pubs trashed it because it was just different.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, that's people, and you know, that's like remember last year the 21 Savage Metro Boomin, people like, it's a trap album, so it can't be album of the year. And you know, it's a trap, it can't win album. It can't be the best.
Was fire.
Even though that album was great, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just certain things have a certain stigma of like, it's a conscious rap album, so it's the best rap album of the year. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Or I remember 1 year Complex gave what's the group, the two twins? Oh crap, I'm sorry. Two twins. They have songs. They're a group. Sway Lee.
Oh, Ray Strummer.
Oh my gosh. Where have they been? But I remember one time Complex
separated. Like, I don't either think are they still together? Like, I
don't think so. Sway Lee's doing his own thing. I remember 1 year Complex put him in the top 3. It was like To Pimp a Butterfly, Adele's album, and Ray Schumer. And their argument was like, hey, just because it's not this conscious rap album doesn't mean it can't be a great album. They did their job in terms of making people party and turn up, just as well as Kendrick tried to do to Pimp a Butterfly to make people feel something, or Adele made you feel this heartbreak from her album, you know? So I agree with that point, Nnamdi, because there's always this like stigma of like, this album has to be the best, and this kind of album can't be good, you know what I'm saying? So yeah. So
I like
The
that. I want the
conversation,
streets
fellas.
and anyone listening to know that to Avery's point, I think trust is so important that, just know we're constantly asking ourselves questions when we review albums to make sure we aren't being biased or being closed-minded or just hating to be mean, which is why I think we left the Lil Uzi episode up for the sake of transparency, but I think all of us have probably acknowledged that we probably went a little bit too hard, and I think it was a good learning lesson for us about how to better articulate our feelings about a project instead of just saying it's trash 100 times.
We were very early on in the podcast,
But I feel like if anything, I've justified it because I gave both Lil Uzi and Playboi Carti their creds and whatever newsletter that was.
You did.
We're balance.
Growth. Hey, growth.
Exactly.
Hey, and I'll also in that same vein say Lil Uzi has had one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. So
What's Lil Uzi show?
It was at a festival, and he was absolutely insane, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So
there you go.
Avery, you in the mosh pit?
I mean, it was a festival, so everyone was kind of just.
Wow.
Wait, Avery, you was in the mosh pit
in a
raging?
panorama? That's crazy.
This was in 2017.
Nah, that was pre-panorama, but that was still the panorama.
Wow.
Wasn't 2017 the swine flu panorama? That's crazy.
Yo, for real, that's what I'm saying.
You cancel me on my own podcast. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh. New releases, guys.
Ooh.
Good conversation, but new releases. There's a lot of them. A lot of albums. Let me just list off some of these albums. James Blake, Friends That Break Your Heart, Bad Bad Not Good, Talk Memory, Loop, Dreamville Signee, Goldmouth, Don Toliver, Life of Don, Currency, Stilts on an Ocean, I Love McConan, DMW 007, Word by Atmosphere. I skipped that, I don't know why. Lady Jesus, Upsale, Justice, Justin Bieber, Complete Edition, The Alchemist, Aaliyah re-releases. A lot of albums came out, guys.
I thought you were about to read this whole list, and I was like, how am I going to interrupt him? Because this is just...
No, I wasn't going to say the album. What'd you guys listen to?
I mean, we know James Blake is fire. Another DTs. Well, actually, I talked to someone. Here's my James Blake story yesterday. As I was going to a concert yesterday, I was talking with a good buddy of mine named Dave about this album, and a woman randomly on the subway interrupted and was like, "Are you talking about the new James Blake?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What do you think? You loved it, right?" And she goes, "Well, I mean, I loved Assume Form." And the minute she said that, I was like, "Oh, I know what this is," because this is the new narrative with this album so far that I've tried to shield myself from saying. Everyone's saying, "Oh, well, it's not Assume Form, but it's not, it's okay. It's good." I think it's good, and we're going to talk about it a lot more next week because we're probably reviewing it. But that was, I think, probably my favorite album release this year.
Definitely the biggest one. It feels like biggest one of this week too. So yeah, we're gonna. I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I liked it off of first listen, but we'll get more thoughts on that when we review it. This is interesting. Bad Bad Not Good. That's a group by Jasmine that I really love. That they came out. They've worked with a lot of artists, and their album finally came out. So that's a good listen. Loot, Dreamville artist. Goldmouth. This album is really good. I don't know if you guys have listened. This album is really good. Jid's on it. Saba's on it. Who was it? West Side Boogie's on it. Were you guys able to listen to this Dreamville Signee's album?
I haven't listened yet, but I definitely am going to. I typically try to give all the Dreamville acts a listen because, I was thinking about this the other day and I was like, before Griselda, if it was in the picture, I feel like Dreamville had the reputation for the lesser known artists who were really good at rapping. Now, not to the level of Griselda where everyone has sort of agreed that they're the best, but I do think it feels like, oh, the good rappers who aren't really known, oh yeah, that's Luke and Jid and Spillage Village and Boz, that was Cause, all them folks,
Yeah.
Justin Bieber's probably gonna be number one again. Not gonna, in the spirit of the episode we just had, I'm not gonna talk about this deluxe, which
at least 9 new songs.
9 new songs. One of them was called.
But Jaden is on it's featured.
Was that one called Haley?
One's called Haley.
I still maintain this.
Why did he just call the album Haley?
I still maintain this entire album should have just been called Haley and been the love album it was meant to be, instead of trying to cherry pick social justice. Sorry. If anyone's listening, if y'all think I should write about my feelings about justice, please tell me, because I don't want to be.
You've been thinking about it for a minute. You've been thinking about justice. You've been wanting to write about justice.
I need to just get it out, but I don't.
You have a reason now. You have a reason.
You need to get it out. Yeah, you need to get it out. Avery, how'd you feel about this Don Toliver?
I liked it. I was listening to it while I was building furniture, and so it's kind of just on in the background. But it sounded really cool, and like he sounds a lot like Travis Scott. I will acknowledge that.
He really does.
And Travis Scott is also on like 2 of the songs on here. But I enjoyed it. I thought it sounded really cool. I liked Don Toliver's voice. I liked him on the Baby Keem album. I liked his features. That song with Kali Uchis, Drugs and Hella Melodies, is still fire. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
That's what's up. Yeah, he does sound like Travis Scott to me, but that don't mean he's bad or anything. But yeah. So, The Alchemist, This Thing of Ours 2.
Amazing.
I love the first one. So the second one's really cool. I'm just thinking this for like year-end purposes. Are these 2 different projects, or are these all in one? I'm wondering.
One like a B-side? Is that how we were supposed to look at it? Kind of. You know what I mean?
I don't know. No, I don't know. It's just like he calls This Thing of Ours 1, This Thing of Ours 2. Like
then two separate.
Okay, that's how I'm thinking of it too. Okay, cool.
These Avery releases are very ethically something for me, because especially so this one's a compilation, I believe.
Yeah, these are both compilations. And
compilations. R. Kelly just wrote on too many of Aaliyah's early songs for me to feel good about streaming. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's like a dissonance. I want to support Aaliyah, but I can't listen to Age Ain't Nothing But a Number knowing what I know. Like I can't.
Exactly. Yeah. It's tough. Oof. I agree with you, especially the conversation we had last week.
This week.
Let's talk about the one that was all over Twitter for me. Super by Cordae.
So good.
Cordae went in, man. Cordae went in. Avery likes to give you.
I feel like y'all haven't been big fans of his, like some of his.
Whoa! Hold on. Let me clarify. That last EP, I was not the highest one. I was like, it was a little lackluster for me. I didn't say it was bad. It was the last EP, not the album. The EP. I love
that EP. So.
And if Nnamdi, if I did, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember me and Nnamdi being like, it's not bad. It just wasn't like.
It just wasn't great. I think he could have done better. That's all. And clearly now
people were like, "Oh my gosh, fire, heat, amazing." So, yeah.
Which is what I think. I love that EP. So.
Okay.
Super is good though. Super was dope. Did you listen to that Funny Feeling, Phoebe Bridgers, Avery?
Yeah. So it's a cover of a Bo Burnham song, and she initially had released it on Bandcamp. Now it's streaming. So if you stream it, the proceeds from that song go to fighting the Texas abortion law. So.
Oh, that's dope.
Oh. I like that.
Super dope.
No, it's funny how different our timelines look, because the song that everyone was talking about on my timeline was The Boys. Jesse Nelson was thinking about. That's why I added it to this list. Jesse Nelson used to be in Little Mix. She kind of left. She, she's like the Zayn, if you know One Direction. She left early.
Gotcha.
So she had the song with Nicki Minaj, which I'll say about the song. It samples, not even sample. Basically, it's like a new version of Bad Boys for Life by Diddy. Y'all know that song? Like, yeah. It's a very well-known song. You sampled that. I think it sounds great. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's probably one of the better flips of a sample like I've heard in a minute. I think she kind of made Sweetie got to kind of take a backseat to the whole 90 sample thing, because it was that good in my opinion. The Nicki Minaj versus Fine is doing really well on charts. But the real conversation was colorism, because in the video some people say, oh well, you're this white woman from the UK is sort of.
Oh, I saw that.
It's the same Ariana Grande formula that she used to get backlash for, like your skin's really tan.
Or Iggy Azalea.
Wait,
your skin looks really tan in this one. Your hair, it's kind of a little.
She's white.
Oh, she's.
I did not know that. I saw the video this morning, and I was like, "Why is everyone mad at me?"
She looks mixed.
That's crazy.
This woman's white. Wow, that's a problem. I got a problem already.
Well, okay, so it looks like that's gone to the podcast now.
Wow,
what was on my timeline? But I do still think the song itself is good. I just need people to understand that, like, you can dibble and dabble in R&B without having to go through a black phase. I just don't know how else to say that, especially after our interview with gosh, I hate that it's slipping my name, because she's
Gabby Paul.
We featured her. No, I'm not doing. Hold on, y'all. We're gonna pause until I find
Gabby Paul. What episode do you mean?
Gabby Paul. Yes.
Gabby Paul.
Gabby Paul. Like, you can say I want to give R&B or like a hip hop thing a chance without feeling like you have to just put on black. Like, just to put. Go through your black phase. And we've seen like every pop star like go through some form of this. Like Christina Aguilera went through her dirty phase. Britney Spears kind of did it during Blackout. Like Ariana Grande did it during Thank You Next and like Positions, and got so much backlash for it. And now this girl's doing it. Like Miley Cyrus did it during Bangers. Like, you don't have to go through the black phase.
Bruno Mars even.
You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. One I want to ask you about, Avery. I must apologize, Pink Panthers, because her album is on the way.
I was gonna say,
Pink
Panthers dropped another 1 minute and 45-second banger. Like
this album's gonna be too. First of all, the
album's gonna be like
it says
15 minutes long.
It says 10 songs, 19 minutes.
Yeah, it's gonna be so short. It'd be
this
great.
is like in the Earl vein of like 22 tracks, 15 seconds.
For us short album fans.
Yeah.
This is kind of extreme.
That's extremely short though. That's extremely short.
It's really good though. So
yeah, a couple ones I want to shout out to. Contacts by Mick Jenkins, really good track. I was playing that before the podcast. Piano Love, Conway the Machine. He dropped another album, guys.
I love Piano Love. I'm sorry. I love Piano Love. I love the pianos in the background. I love how
Conway's your favorite.
I think so, right?
Conway's your favorite. He's your favorite.
I think it's kind of hard.
You always lean. You're like
favorite. I think I'm gonna commit. I think I'm gonna give it to Conway.
I think Conway's your favorite. Yeah, for sure. You guys, I gotta ask about this one though, really quick. Venom Eminem remix.
Okay, so
Venom remix.
So Nnamdi learned this week.
I liked this song. I know everyone hated it. I liked Venom when they came out with the first Venom.
No, this is a new song.
It's a remix. But it's kind of.
So this one has Polo G.
Formula?
No. So it's, it's the new one with Polo G and Mozzie.
The Eminem remix, the Venom remix, the Venom remix with Eminem.
He came out with a new Venom song. There's a new Venom movie.
But I know. But is it still called Venom?
It's a different song.
No, this one. Oh, it is Polo G on it. Oh yeah.
I'm confused. So was this?
It's
song
not.
called...
No. This is very separate from the original Venom song, which you liked and most other people hated. This is a different song. It's called something else too.
Oh, so it's not called Venom.
It's like no. There's two. It's like a single. It says "Last One Standing" as a track, and then there's Eminem. That's the one with like I think Polo G and stuff on it, right? But then there's a song called Venom. Yeah, but then there's a Venom remix with Eminem on it. And the original, speaking on the original is not.
I see it now. Okay.
It's just really in the vein of like corny Eminem, like
stop it.
Venom. It is.
It's not good.
Avery is out for.
That song is not good. Today. I'm sorry.
Oh, another one I want to shout out too. Y'all should listen to this Garden Party by Masego featuring Big Boy. Look how I spell Big Boy and Jid. That thing is great. That thing is great. Yeah. boy.
Wait, friends. Boy. Wait, no, sorry. Was there anything else you were shouting out?
I'm good. I'm done now.
Okay, because now I'm looking at the timeline. So we're already at an hour, maybe an hour and 10. So we're gonna fly through Billboard highlights. All I really want to highlight this week, predictions for what's going to happen by the time this episode drops tomorrow. Taylor Swift's supposed to go back to the top of the Billboard 200. Fearless because of vinyls again. Because again, Taylor Swift be selling vinyls like nobody else sells vinyls. It's kind of insane. So she is back at number 1. Everything Meek Mills is set to debut at number 3 with Expensive Pain, about 93,000 units moved, which I think is really good for Meek Mill. I would give him that. And then Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga's jazz album Love for Sale is set to debut at number 7 with about 42.
Lady Gaga got an album? I know that shit.
And this is significant because this will be, I think, Tony Bennett's oldest album, and I think he gets a record for like the oldest musician to put out a new body of work to like chart.
Gotcha.
So shout out to him. So that's all I'm really gonna say about this. The week that's currently ending by the time this episode comes out, let's reflect on what was happening. BTS scored their 6th number 1 song on the Hot 100.
That's significant.
A song with Coldplay called My Universe. This is insane, not only because it's their 6th, but because they've done it in like 2 years. And I distinctly remember the conversation of like, low-key, it may have been less than 2 years because our podcast hasn't been around for 2 years.
No, bro. I think it's been. I think in the last year they've had 6 number 1s.
Let me Google that before I find out I'm lying.
But essentially, that's just like an insane stat, and that kind of just is a bigger indictment of these award shows being like putting them in a different category because they're like just pop. They're not K-pop. Like they are. That's their genre of new K-pop. But like they need to be in the categories with all the big hitters, with the Weekends, with
American pop, basically.
American. I mean, it is, and the thing is like. You go like, oh, they're speaking, but they're singing in English too. Like exactly. they sound really good too.
They're with Coldplay here. Like
they're with Coldplay here.
It's
so
Coldplay.
Like, exactly.
Wow.
Coldplay,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah. So I can reconfirm that. Yeah, this is really number 6. That is insane because I remember when the conversation was, well, BTS can't. They don't do well commercially because they don't get any radio support. I remember saying that on the pod. And now, if anything, maybe a year later, they have 6 #1 songs
in America.
In America, by the way. That's America. And the thing about BTS, when I say in America, probably chances are that song also went to #1 on the global chart. So globally as well. And like, that's something to say. And I think this should be an episode we do one day. There's gonna have to be a reckoning, because I'm gonna look forward to seeing what the Grammy nominations are. But I know I was really disappointed when the VMAs limited them to a K-pop category, which it felt like they literally introduced that category just to give BTS an award and not have to deal with, well, do they get video of the year? Because they're massively successful. So we're gonna have to, like, critically, that should be reflected,
I totally agree.
RIP to the Pitchfork reviewer that gives BTS a less than favorable album review one day.
Ooh, RIP. They will.
It's gonna be a wrap.
That is RIP. Yeah.
Also, on the Billboard 200, all I really want to talk about. So again, this is the week that's ending. NBA YoungBoy, I think I mentioned this last week. He debuted at
by like 2,000.
He edged out Drake by, I want to say, like 5,000 units. So that should tell you the selling power of Drake. But yeah, he's a #1. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow, some way, Drake ends up bouncing back to #1 next week, or the week after Taylor Swift again, excuse me, because it's just, this was a brand new album, so it was going to do it. Taylor Swift, she just released the vinyls, that was going to do it. But if it's just regular streaming, normal activity, no huge releases, Drake is still going to be #1. So I could see that going back. I also want to bring up Morgan Wallen, because y'all just know I love giving y'all updates. And it's not even that, it's just that this album is the best selling by units so far this year, in total, at least year to date. It's the fact that there's just such a disconnect from like what the industry, how they held him accountable to like what the turnout has been. And I wonder if it was because there was an understanding that like he'll be fine, I bring up, there was another artist called the Hardy Boys who are upset because the CMAs are coming up and Morgan Wallen isn't invited despite having country's biggest music album.
Wow.
And still being allowed to be nominated, so it's sort of weird. I feel conflicted about it because, I'm all for people having to take accountability, and I'm super happy that he did get sort of the timeout that he got. But it does sort of feel a little performative to not invite him, but still let him be nominated.
I wonder if he's still going to have like a video or something.
Statement saying he's nominated, but he won't win.
Well, yeah, never mind.
I may have made that up, but I feel like I remember reading something.
That I wouldn't be surprised if that was the statement.
He's nominated, but we want, don't worry.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll see what happens with that. But apparently more artists are speaking out, so we'll see if that gains any steam. Prodigy of the week, I chose Flower of Devotion by a band called Dead. They are a low-key band from Chicago. They have about, let's say, 300K monthly listeners on Spotify, but they've been on tour. They did a sold-out show in Brooklyn, New York yesterday. I went to it, and it was really great. It was a good show. It's a little bit more rock, alt rock, indie rock. I don't really know what distinguishes those three things that so I had to say all three at the same time. But you'll hear a couple songs. I enjoy it.
How do you spell Dead? How do you spell it?
DHD.
DHD. Interesting. My project of the week is Half God by Wiki. I kind of mentioned this in my newsletter where I was talking about Navy Blue, and it was also on the releases last week too. But man, this album's great. Navy Blue produced the whole thing. Wiki is an artist from New York. Patrick Morales, that's his real name. Earl Sweatshirt's on here. Mike is on here. A lot of artists I've already had as project of the week, but I freaking love this album. This album is in contention for making my top 5, 10-ish this year. I really, really love this album. It's the most New York album I've heard this year, bro. Like, it's so great. But man, Half God by Wiki.
My project
WIKI.
My project of the week is Be the Cowboy by Mitski. They released a new single for like the first time in 3 years this week called Working Under the Knife, and it's really good. So after listening to that, I just wanted to go back and listen to their last album. It's pretty short. It's only like 30 minutes, but it's really good. So I'll throw some songs on the playlist.
So look forward to that. And remember, on our playlist, we're doing something a little bit different where we are now doing monthly playlists, which I am a big fan of. So right now it's called the October Demo on Spotify and Apple Music. Same concept, except you may see a couple more you may see that it leans more newer tracks versus Projects of the Weeks. Because the idea is we want to highlight some of the new music that month while also still acknowledging some of our favorite songs. So definitely look out of that. I think it's much more manageable than our summer playlist, which is what I'm going to call that now, which is 13 hours long and has 350 songs on it. So this may be more digestible. But In the meantime, thank you for rocking with us this episode. Check out our newsletter that's going to drop this Thursday. And yeah, show us some love. If like, share, subscribe, and yeah, definitely DM us, tweet us your music thoughts too.
Subscribe to the newsletter, all that. Yep.
So yeah, we will